Hello there, Armaholics. I think it's time we had a little chat about Reforger. Now, everything is timestamped, but I do invite you not to skip this intro. We really need to set the scene here. I'd normally leave something like this to the end of the video, but I think it's important we set the tone now. You've probably guessed by now that this isn't Arma 4, and I wouldn't even call it Arma 3.5 as of yet. Reforger represents, as the video suggested, a milestone. It's a playable showcase of where the Enfusion engine is right now, a stepping stone and a testbed as it were for the now confirmed Arma 4. It's the culmination of many years of work, the result an infusing of the massive scale capabilities of the real virtuality engine with the flexibility, user friendliness and the efficient architecture of the Enforce engine. And if I was going to turn around and try and sum up Arma Reforger in a nutshell for you, at this present time I would say this. Imagine Bohemia Interactive is building a house, but it has to be a very specific house to accommodate certain specific base needs, but with the room for substantial expansion. They turn around and say the foundations of the house are ready, but we really need those people we are catering it for to come on down, have a ganders and have some input before we start erecting the walls and building the actual structure. It's basically saying let's finish and build this house together. Reforger also offers the opportunity for our wonderful community to get hands-on with the workflow and inner workings of Enfusion. It gives the modding community ample time to forge new mods and possibly port existing models and textures over. Now I think the scripting language has changed, so I'm not banking on things like Ace, Antistasi or Vindicta being easily ported. I might be wrong, and I hope I am, but I believe the new Enforce script differs greatly, but does offer greater opportunities for our lovely modders out there. And thus, I hope it just goes to motivate the modders even further. I mentioned Reforger possibly being a multiplayer testbed of sorts, or a foundations test back in June of 21, so personally I was fully prepared for this recent announcement not to be Arma 4. It's just too much left to chance to simply whip it up and release it without some kind of feedback from the community. And so guys, here's our opportunity to perhaps shape Arma 4's development. All that being said, I'm going to say it bluntly, if you're not interested in being part of a process, then I would personally, just for the time being though, hold back. Right, so that's the long-winded disclaimer out of the way. Let's explore Reforger, shall we? Arma Reforger takes place on our old faithful, the island of Everon, first introduced in Operation Flashpoint, or as it is now known, Arma Cold War Assault. Set some years after the original Flashpoint, it is yet again pushed to the forefront of international attention. And guys, it looks absolutely stunning. The coastline, rocky hillsides, lakes, rivers, streams, forests, villages, and the lighting, the way it hits localized areas because of the cloud cover. Driving by in the shade and looking out the window only to see a heavenly glow on the rolling fields ahead, it's just jaw-dropping. Now I'm rocking a GTX 1070, which is obviously getting on a bit now, but it still looks amazing. I've heard some people say so far it doesn't look as good as current AAA titles, but I'm sorry, I have to disagree. Maybe it's my age and PC not doing it justice, but Arma, and now Reforger specifically, just have a certain charm or believability to terrains. Whatever it actually is, this title hits good. Oh, and going on about the aforementioned inclusion of waterways, there's something about streams and rivers running by farmland and villages into forests that really add to the believability. This was something on my Arma 4 wish list, along with many of the things we're about to discuss. In other water related news, if you go for a paddle or even a swim, it will dampen your character. I mean, you would have thought, right? But it's a nice little touch. Rain will also create puddles and mud that will gradually dry after the rain has passed, another neat little detail. Distant shadows, yes, Dyslexia actually picked up on this in his video. So basically, if you're normally hiding in kind of a tree line, players could actually spot you quite easily from a distance because the character model would stand out like a sore thumb against the distant textures. Well, you can kiss goodbye to that. Forested areas or any area with decent foliage cast basic shadows, enough to keep you kind of hidden and stealthy, and the LOD models of said foliage have drastically improved. Oh, and do you remember those pesky aliens that took away all the furniture from interior spaces in Arma 3? Well, they've also been swept aside, with most interiors now sporting that lived-in feeling. Now, to move around the beautifully reimagined Everon, we now have access to jumping, climbing and vaulting as standard. Something to note, there's actually different sounds depending on what you're climbing over. For example, it's going to sound different clambering over a wooden fence than it is to a chain link one. I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's the little details what really go a long way here. Gone are the combat or tactical pace movement speeds from Arma 3. This has instead been replaced with a Tarkov-like scroll to speed function. Anything from a jog to slow deliberate pacing is now possible at the flick of a wheel. Also at the flick of a wheel is crouch control. Have a look-see here. Staying on the general subject of controls, they feel like an Arma/Daisy hybrid. The ADS works like Arma, where you can look down your sight and then hold right mouse button to zoom or focus. But the locomotion of your character and how you interact with the world has definitely seen inspiration from Daisy. Essentially, it can still feel like an action wheel menu when presented with an item with multiple choices, but it's not obtrusive and they require a short hold rather than a press to prevent accidents. In my opinion, it works, it's contextual, whilst remaining very minimal. Talking of minimal and minimalistic, the HUD is also very clean and interactions feel a lot more immersive. For example, vehicles have proper enter and exit animations, and whilst in first person you can look at the ignition and start the engine, look at a button to turn the lights on, look at another seat to switch seats, look at the door to actually exit the vehicle, and of course some of these actions have keyboard shortcuts, but it's awesome that you have the choice to play it a bit more immersively or hardcore. I can only imagine what modders do with this functionality. It might actually give some simulators out there a run for the money. I mentioned the locomotion of characters, definitely an improvement over Arma 3, but the vehicles specifically, well, there's not a lot on offer here, but what is on offer is, how do I put it? It's weighty, and as daft as it might sound, you kind of feel what you're actually driving, especially the trucks. They have obviously done some admirable work here. They don't feel floaty at all. The physics, well, let's just put it this way guys, I've not hit a small insignificant rock whilst driving, only to be catapulted to Malden, so yeah, it sounds like they've fixed a lot of things here. Massive shout out to the sound team for these vehicle noises, they're amazing. Anything from starting the engine and the sound when your Jeep's going through rough terrain is amazing. I love all the jangling. It just adds to the feeling that you are actually in that vehicle driving it. The inventory screen seems to combine Arma 3's look with Daisy's inventory management. Clothing is thankfully not a single item anymore and is instead separated by top, bottoms and boots, which is a huge win for all those who like playing Barbie before and during an operation. What? Come on guys, we all do it, right? Carry weight is still a thing, and the option to carry 2 primary weapons is a welcome one for all the would-be Rambos and Commandos out there. Come on, do it! The inventory feels like a work in progress still, like it can't decide which route to fully embrace, but for the time being it's functional and it's there. Communication also adopts more realism. In a huge nod to community mods like Task Force Radio and Acre, Reforger includes a fully realised radio system where individuals can select their frequency to match platoon or squad level communications. And yes, range does come into play, and given it's the Cold War era, playing as a radio operator with better radio system is actually a kind of roll-stroke playstyle now. To support the newly added communication features, we now have the ability to simply point in any given direction. And to supplement the whole experience when players are looking at their map, for example, listening to a briefing from a squad leader, those maps are actual physical objects, so you'll see the other players with the maps in their hands. This also includes objects like the compass and flashlights. Now, it's a seemingly simple addition, but massively adds to the immersion and serves an actual gameplay purpose. For example, you spot enemy in the distance, but they're looking at the maps, giving you a perfect opportunity to engage.
Surroundings, and we have the air base, so we should be able to count.
No! Right, so let's crack on with what we can actually do in Reforger. For starters, there is a tutorial which introduces newcomers and veterans alike to the controls and Reforger's main game mode, Conflict. Conflict is essentially a capture the island scenario. It introduces a relatively simple logistical metagame in which supply is used to build fortifications, checkpoints, vehicle service points, etc. Supplies work in a very similar fashion to Squad. They are loaded by the players from the main base to the truck, in which the players then drive to objectives to unload and start building the aforementioned structures. The strategic points are dotted all over Everon and will provide a great way to experience the beauty of the island. You choose either the US Army or the Russians. You then load in, choose a squad, or create a new one and then communicate effectively to dominate the island.
Okay, fair enough.
It sounds simple enough, right? But this is the 1980s, and you won't have a magical GPS to see where you are on the map. Good old map and compass reading are your only navigation tools here. Teammates are also not displayed on the map. It can bring in a real sense of panic when you're trying to maneuver on an objective. All the while distant silhouettes appear on the horizon. Are they friendly or hostile? You've no doubt already seen the videos from community members who've had early access to Reforger. You'll notice that a lot of their movements are briefed to their teammates before they actually move out. The solid plans which are laid out are slowly shattered as squads become engaged. Radio ranges are pushed to the limit and the general fog of war takes over. It's chaos, but it's fun chaos. It's one or two simple changes that brings in heaps more realism and emergent gameplay. And I get it, casuals might be put off by this, but a game that it not forces you but rather effectively encourages you to communicate is a great move. Milsim groups have had this experience for years, and I think if players give it a chance, they'll come to love this particular aspect. Imagine getting split up from your unit after a fight and actually thinking, where the am I? It's awesome to get lost, especially at night. It's like a horror game. Admittedly, I haven't got much footage because, like a lot of people, I was at the time having big issues joining servers, and when I did manage to join a server for a mere 30 minutes before getting disconnected, it just left me wanting more and more. I guess I'm going to have to produce a more conflict-centered video when the issues are resolved, but from what little I played, the firefights were ferocious and the general gunplay seemed impactful. It's a really good start in my opinion. If you're wondering about single player, well, apart from the tutorial, no, not really, not as yet anyways. There is AI at neutral objectives, and talking of AI, it's for the most part quite basic. They do, however, react to gunfire, shoot on the move, are able to heal themselves, and jump over walls. And I have seen them split into fire and manoeuvre elements, half the squad suppressing you whilst the other half running at you. I don't think it's something that they've really fleshed out as of yet, but we have to start somewhere, right? Pathfinder, on the other hand, seemed better than Arma's typical node-based navigation. AI don't seem to have trouble entering interior spaces and even interacting with doors. Yay, no more ghosting through doors. The other included game mode is called Game Master, and as it currently stands, it's a very stripped down version of Zeus, but again, with further development, I can see it one day matching or surpassing Zeus. Whether that's achieved in Reforger or Arma 4 is yet to be seen. There are obviously issues, it's early access of course, but the glaring server issues need to be addressed before anything else in my humble opinion. People can forgive the bugs and lack of content and missing features as long as they have a stable enough platform to report said issues and provide constructive feedback. For now, that's more or less all I've got to say, but before I go, if you watch the official Reforger livestream, the developers mentioned how the real virtuality engine powered 20 years of Arma, and they're aiming for another good chunk of years with Enfusion. I think the engine has massive potential for expansion and improvement of features, and I have no doubt we can look forward to another 20 years of the best military gaming experience out there. Long live Arma. And that's all for now folks, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Oh, by the way guys, forgot to say, but doesn't this music just kick ass? In fact, the whole soundtrack sounds like it's gonna kick major ass. Check it out.